The morning came like a metronome Marcus Hale no longer needed but could not live without. At 6 o'clock he cracked the window to let in the Pacific wind, poured coffee he never sweetened, and stood in the waking quiet of a cedar and glass house on a black basalt headland outside Astoria, Oregon. His empire, coastal freight turned software routes and warehouses, had shrunk to folders and quarterly statements he barely skimmed. The screens in the security room still bloomed to life at his step, 32 cameras and a map of doors he trusted more than people. At 6:30 he ate oatmeal like a task. He peeled a pear with the care of a bomb technician and examined the mail as if it might hiss. Most mornings he said nothing. Words cost more than silence, and silence still paid its dividend. There was a time he liked microphones and boardrooms and the bright theater of triumph. Then the world walked through him with muddy boots. His son had tried to put him under conservatorship to pry open the family fund. His daughter, with her practiced smile and private debts, siphoned what she could before anyone noticed. He noticed too late. A physician in whose hands he had laid his fatigue submitted ghostly invoices for treatments that never happened. The headland gave him fewer headaches than these memories, yet he could not stop cataloging them like dangerous tides. He refused to move a record from the music room Maya loved. He never allowed Crew, when he still kept one, to touch the dust on her piano. Now there was no Crew. He had fired the last gardener after 3 questions about the cliff path he guarded like a secret. Grief had made him devout in the church of control. The service was simple: lock, check, watch. When the cough started, a dry metronome to match the other, Marcus gave in to practicality. He would bring someone in on his terms. He called an agency in Seattle and laid out conditions that sounded like an indictment. No criminal record, no social media, no prying, no memoir in progress, no press, no photographs. He hung up and let the wind salt his face. 3 profiles arrived the next afternoon. 2 he discarded before the printer cooled. The third made him pause. Nora Bennett, 27, caretaker by instinct and paid work alike. A resume that wore its virtues without polish. Hospital housekeeping nights, elder care mornings, years spent keeping a community center open when the funding fell. There was no static about her, only the clarity of a plain glass of water on a table that had seen too many glasses thrown. He gave the gate a temporary code and told the agency to send her. He did not say he would be watching. The bus stopped on the county road just after 8. Nora walked the last half-mile with a canvas bag and wind-bent hair. No jewelry, no lacquer. At the door, she asked if shoes should be left on the mat. She did not look past his shoulder into the rooms where the light pooled. "This house keeps to its routines," he said. "So do I." "I'm good with routines," she answered. "They help people rest." Her first question was about the music room. "Do you want the records dusted by sleeve or by play order?" It was the kind of question that understands altars. He almost said thank you. Instead he said, "Leave that room as if snow has fallen there." She nodded without curiosity, as if he had asked her to pour water into a glass, not into the sea. For the rest of the morning she moved like a careful tune. Bathrooms first, then kitchen instruments, then the pantry whose order comforted him more than it should. He watched her on the small screen above the desk while skimming a lawsuit he did not care to win. She did not open a door twice or pocket anything to make a small wrong feel small. She did not peer down the corridor to the studio that waited behind its pale door. In the afternoon he had her restock a guest room and wipe salt haze from the tall panes. She worked steadily without chatter. Once, when the wind rattled the eaves, she glanced toward the headland as if taking its measure. He saw something steady in her face. Not passivity, not fear, just a quiet agreement with the weather. Felt dangerous to like that. At 4 she returned the vacuum to its hook and waited in the hall. Marcus realized she would not leave until dismissed. "Tomorrow," he said. "Same time." She nodded, thanked him, and asked if he wanted receipts for supplies. He told her to keep them in the kitchen drawer, left side. She wrote it down without glancing at the not-so-invisible cameras. Only when the bus braked side on the road did Marcus step into the east corridor and unlock the studio he had not entered since Maya's scarf still hung on the chair. The air had the cool of absence. He moved to the drafting table, lifted a leather portfolio, and pulled out a single sheet. An internal transfer authorization that could move funds with 3 keystrokes and 1 code. He set it under a paperweight shaped like a ship's propeller. On the workbench, he powered up a terminal he had air-gapped from the rest of the house. On its screen, he left an admin session ready, a cursor blinking like a dare. In a small tray, he placed a fob that would bypass two-factor, something an employee could have stolen years ago had anyone been bold enough. He stood in that room a long time, listening for the tide. If he could not trust himself to love again, he could at least determine whether he could trust someone to dust a room and leave a temptation untouched. He wrote a code on a yellow note, half true, half false, and set it beside the keyboard. Then he did what the house had taught him best. Waited. Nora arrived before the fog burned off. Marcus watched her cross the gravel with the measured stride of someone who had learned not to hurry where other people's fear might trip her. Inside, she slipped off her shoes, hung her canvas bag on the same hook as yesterday, and asked if there were preferences for the guest towels. "Fold them like you would for someone you respect," he said. She nodded and the day opened. He let routine do its masking. Bathrooms, windows, pantry rows straightened until the labels faced one direction. He had left the studio door closed but not latched. The terminal screen slept, ready for the slightest touch. At 10:30, Nora brought in the ocean with her, salt in her hair and the kind of calm the wind grants to those it does not bully. She took the laundry to the hall outside the studio, paused at the cracked door, and looked not into the room but at the floor around it. No footprints but her own. The camera above the lintel clicked like an insect. She tapped twice. "Mr. Hale." Silence. She eased the door wider with a knuckle and stood in the threshold. A drafting table, a leather portfolio, a yellow code, a security fob, a monitor waking blue. Nora's dark brown skin took the light like polished wood. She stood there, a black woman alone in a rich man's private world, aware of how quickly rooms like this mistake presence for permission. Her phone buzzed. Aunt Delegate Nora listened. The community market her family had kept alive through layoffs and pandemics was short on its lease. The landlord wanted the back rent cleared within a week. Refrigeration repairs unpaid. Health inspector due Friday. $42,000 by Monday or locks changed. Her aunt's voice stayed gentle, as if gentleness could keep the lights on. Nora let the number settle like a stone on her sternum. Around her, temptation took the form of office supplies. Paper with a code. Metal on a ring. A screen that made power look like an ordinary afternoon action. She felt the quick, human flicker. No one would be hurt. The money would not be missed. A store would live. Then she heard her grandmother's rule. When a test arrives dressed as Mercy, check its pockets for theft. She stepped into the kitchen where the cameras would see the whole of her and called the agency. "This is Nora Bennett at the Hale residence," she said to voicemail. "A door to a private workspace is ajar with sensitive materials visible. I have not entered. Requesting instructions." She placed the phone on the counter like a clean tool, rinsed her hands, and returned to the threshold. She minimized risk. The fob went into a sealed kitchen envelope. She signed the flap and wrote the time. The yellow note she did not trust. She copied it onto a fresh index card, marking the last 2 digits with a only she would recognize as a warning that the numbers might lie. She did not test the code. Instead, she woke the terminal, found the lock icon, and clicked it. The screen asked for credentials, a neutral barricade. She set the envelope on her lap and drew a chair from the hall. Guard duty is not dramatic. It is an exercise in humility, in letting minutes walk across your knees. She stationed herself outside the door, not inside it. Twice she signed for deliveries. Once she returned to the pantry to fix the one crooked label that had been worrying her peripheral vision. Otherwise she sat, steady as a lighthouse, and let the temptation be an object in a room rather than a river in her mind. Behind a wall and 3 corners away, Marcus watched, surprised by restraint instead of reach. He had prepared his heartbeat for the plea he'd heard too many times. Just this once. Instead he saw deliberation. Brow relaxed, shoulders square, patient without being resigned. At noon she ate on the back steps, the ocean rummaging through its blue cabinet below. She called her aunt back and said only, "I'm working on it," which was not a promise to solve, only a promise to stand with. When she returned to the chair, she adjusted the angle so she could see both the studio and the front drive. The envelope never left her lap. At 2, the agency returned her call. "Secure sensitive materials and await the homeowner." "Understood," she said. She wrote a one-page incident report in her tidy hand: time, location, items observed, actions taken, and placed it on the kitchen counter. By 4, the light had turned from silver to brass. She stood, stretched without spectacle, and knocked once more on the studio door. "Mr. Hale? I'm leaving the envelope in the top drawer of the hall table and the report on the counter." She replaced the chair, closed the door to the degree it had been open when she found it, and went to wash the windows of the west room, leaving the studio like a tide pool a respectful distance from the sea. When the bus sighed on the road again, Marcus stayed where he was, letting the house be quiet as a sincere apology. He picked up the envelope, weighed its simple integrity, opened it and found not only the fob but a sentence on the flap. "I assumed this was not mine." The index card's dotted digits told him she had seen through his bait and left him his pride intact. He had built a trap and found a witness. The wind pressed its forehead to the glass and then withdrew, shy about the intimacy of the afternoon. Marcus did not call right away. He walked the perimeter of the studio as if the walls could confess on his behalf, then stood in the doorway where Nora had made her small fort of patience. He could feel how the afternoon had rearranged his house. It was as if someone had opened a window that had been painted shut for years. He found her in the west room with a squeegee, the ocean waffling tide light across the glass. "Ms. Bennett," he said. She lowered the tool and waited, not apologizing for air she had breathed, not defending what she had done. People who had wronged him began with speeches. People who were right began with quiet. "I left that door ajar," he said. "On purpose." "I assumed," she answered. "And the items?" "In the hall envelope," she said. "Signed and sealed. I didn't touch anything that wasn't mine to touch." He nodded. "You could have," he said, a foolish sentence that made him wince. "There was ample opportunity." "There was opportunity," she said. "It just wasn't mine." He led her to the kitchen where the incident report rested like a newly folded shirt. "You sat 2 hours. I did other things," she said. "But yes, mostly I Saturday. Why not come find me? I figured if a door is open on purpose, the person who opened it will want to know what I do with the space," she said, then added. "And I am a black woman in a house full of cameras. I do not step into private rooms without witnesses, even when I'm being good." The sentence landed with the weight of weather. Marcus felt, not defensively but accurately, how many rooms had been bored by his suspicion while other people had learned caution to survive it. "Thank you for telling me," he said, "and for how you handled it." He took an envelope from the drawer, wrote a number on a check, and slid it across. "This is a thank you, not a purchase." She looked at the paper as if it were a mirror she did not need. "I don't take money for doing what's right," she said. "Everyone takes money," he said, then heard the tiredness in his own claim. "Not for this," she answered and pushed the envelope back. "If you want to keep me on, pay me for the hours we agreed." That's enough. There was no virtue preening in it, only a clear boundary. He found himself almost relieved. Money had kept abandoning him at crucial hours. It was good to meet someone it did not know how to chase. He asked what had made her call the agency before calling him. "Protocol," she said. "I wanted a third party to know what was happening. Saves you from thinking I staged anything. Saves me from the same fear." "What would you have done if I hadn't returned today?" "Stayed until a supervisor or you arrived," she said. "Or until my bus forced my hand. I would have left a note, locked what I could, and filmed my walk out loud, narrating the clock and the door. I've done that before in other houses. People forget that honesty needs paperwork." He sat. The chair complained softly, as if unused to sharing weight. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "I am not good company." My life is narrow by my own hand. I ask more of the people around me than is reasonable. I cannot pay for kindness, but I can pay for labor. Would you stay the week? I want to rebuild the house on paper, keys, codes, which rooms get left as snow. Audit the routines. Find the holes I made in trying to make none. I can do that, she said. If the music room stays unsnowed by me. It will, he said. It doesn't change anything about how I work today. But it's one reason I took the job when the agency called. I wanted to see if he could feel a memory turn over like a tide stone and show its other side. Maya had written the check and asked him to sign. He had insisted on anonymity. She had insisted on one board line that told the truth. It was us, he said. My wife's idea. She wanted the world to keep its hearts. I'm sorry she isn't here, Nora said. And the sentence was so simple it unsoldered something in him. He did not cry, he didn't have to. The room did what crying would have done. He closed the checkbook. All right, he said. Let's begin with the honest parts. Tomorrow you'll shadow me while I walk the systems. Then you'll walk them alone and tell me what I missed. She smiled in a way that did not clamor for his approval. I'll make a binder, she said. Tabs. A map that starts with doors and ends with people. When she left that evening, the bus brake did its melancholy sigh out on the road. Marcus stood in the studio one more time and touched the envelope she had signed. It felt like a modest benediction, human-sized and unglamorous. He had expected to feel clever. Instead, he felt invited, foolishly, to become a person who could be trusted by someone who owed him nothing. In the music room, dust lay on the silent keys like fine ash. He did not disturb it, but he opened the window an inch and let the night come in. The headland woke to gulls, and Marcus woke to the practical mercy of Nora's footsteps. She arrived with a storm-gray binder, tabs already labeled. Doors, codes, routines, people. If you want the house to rest, she said, list its worries. He walked her through the systems. 2 deadbolts here, keypad there, panic switch by the oven. She listened, then taped a small blue flag beside the switch. Blue means breathe, she said. Ask if a fear is present or just loud. She didn't remove anything. She recontexted it. In the office, she asked for bills. He handed over the stack he'd avoided. Nora sorted quickly. Her finger paused on a recurring charge. North Shore Wellness, she read. Biweekly. 17 months. Inconsistent amounts. Dr. Keegan, Marcus said. He treated my fatigue. Or said he did. Nora circled the line item. We'll request records and put a hold on autopay, she said. A lie on a form is still a lie. They checked doors. The studio stayed closed. The music room remained a snowfall under glass. In the pantry, she moved 1 jar half an inch. Your wife liked cumin up front, she said. I can keep that. Late morning brought an interruption disguised as help. A white van idled in the drive. Pacific Compliance. Camera service. A man in an orange vest knocked. Routine firmware check, he said, holding a blank form. Nora stepped forward. Work order number? Dispatcher name? Which manufacturer? His smile thinned. We don't sign for boxes we didn't order, she said, even. He left. Marcus realized his hands had stopped shaking, not because the danger was small, but because someone had taken the front line without fanfare. In the kitchen, Nora added a tab. Predators. Not people, she said. Behaviors. Invoices without itemization. Deliveries without orders. Stories that rush you. She drew a small lighthouse. Look out. At noon, Aunt Dell called. The landlord had raised the demand to $48,000, due Monday. The refrigerator compressor had failed. Milk had gone warm. Nora listened, made a list she would not show Marcus, and ended with, I'm with you. He heard the strain anyway. Tell me what you need, he said. A plan, she said. Not a rescue that turns into a leash. Rescue can be anonymous, he offered. Even anonymous rescues have fingerprints, she said gently. Help me think long. So he asked questions instead of solving. Who supplied the store? Could deliveries be renegotiated? Terms extended? Spoilage cut? Did the neighborhood want what the market no longer stocked? Nora sketched answers on a napkin. A community credit night. A supplier who might float a week if someone reputable vouched. A social worker who could place the market on a fresh food grant shortlist. I can make a call, Marcus said. No names. Just a voice a supplier might recognize as solvent. On speaker, Nora said. He obliged. Together they threaded a brief conversation that bought Dell 3 weeks and a compressor at cost. When the supplier asked for a contact, Nora gave her aunt's number, not Marcus's. After the call, he felt lighter, as if usefulness had scrubbed a stain money never had. They broke for lunch. There's something else, Marcus said. My son, Evan. He slid his phone across the island. An email sat like a drawn blade. Hearing request, Friday EX part. Nora read it and did not disparage anyone. What's true, she said, is that grief can make people confuse power with protection. Or with payday, he said. She didn't argue. She added a tab labeled legal and wrote, witnesses, primary care physician, accountant, neighbor who sees routines. You don't win court with feelings, she said. You win with paper and steadiness. In the afternoon, he tried the music room and could not turn the knob. Nora, seeing him at the threshold, busied herself elsewhere. He closed the door and went instead to the office where he pulled a box from a low closet. Inside lay the thin bones of a former life, letters from the Harbolite Fund, the small foundation he and Maya had staffed with late dinners and early checks. Mission: quiet, precise help, no headlines. He set a letter on the island. The mission line looked back like a lighthouse on a fog bank. Help quietly, aim precisely, disappear. You still can, Nora said. But the lever has to be trust. Toward evening the sky swerved from pewter to persimmon. Nora finished labeling the last key, copied the codes into her binder, then closed it with a palm that felt ceremonial. Tomorrow I'll test run the routes alone, she said. I'll pretend I'm you, and you'll watch where I lose your way. He thought of the studio envelope and the chair in the hall. I already did, he said. Keep doing it until the house breathes on its own. Nora slung her canvas bag and hesitated. About the market, she said. If someone were to match community donations quietly, it would make people feel like they saved themselves. He understood the ask inside the non-ask. Harbolite used to be good at that, he said softly. It could be again. When the bus sighed on the road, Marcus stood at the window and let the fog take the headland back. He did not know what Friday would force him to say about his competence. He only knew the house felt one human warmer. The blue flags Nora had taped to panic switches glowed in the dim. Breathe, they said, as if the instruction were both architectural and moral. Nora arrived with the fog again and, per their plan, ran the house as if she were Marcus. She walked his routes with the binder open, fingers sliding from doors to routines to people. In the kitchen, she paused at the blue flag by the panic switch and wrote, Breathe equals check story. In the East Hall, she discovered a blind spot where 2 cameras overlapped and left a small paper. On the baseboard, Here quiet things can happen. In the garage, she found a key rack with 3 hooks unlabeled. If we don't know what they open, she told Marcus later, then they open worry. He liked the sentence more than he admitted. At mid-morning, the mail carrier, Mrs. Kincaid, thumped a stack of envelopes onto the island and, with the practiced kindness of a person who sees lives by the handful, asked after his cough. Marcus thanked her, then watched Nora sort the mail like tides. Billing here, personal there, the predatory third pile clipped with a red note. Call to confirm, do not pay. When she reached North Shore Wellness, she underlined the total with the calm of a carpenter measuring twice. Records request filed, she reported. If they stall, we'll escalate. He nodded and opened his phone. A new email from his attorney, Adriana Reyes. Hearing confirmed Friday. 9 a.m. petition relies on decline in executive function and unsafe domestic habits. We will counter with documentation. Please gather medication log, home safety audit, daily schedule, witness statements. He slid the phone to Nora. She read without theatrics and then tapped the binder. "We have 3 of those already," she said. "We'll make the 4th. They began small affidavits. Marcus wrote his routine in neat block print. 6 o'clock window, 6:10 coffee, 6:30 oatmeal, and Nora witnessed. She drafted a statement of her own. Dates worked, tasks observed, safety protocols implemented. She phoned Mrs. Kincaid, who agreed to testify that Marcus signed for packages and conversed coherently about weather and deadlines. Nora added the neighbor who walked his dog at dawn. He'd seen Marcus at the same hour, same path, same modest nod. "We don't need to paint you a hero," she said. "We just need to show you steady." Near noon, a silver SUV rolled up the drive and stopped too close to the steps. Evan Hale climbed out with a leather folder and an expression that mistook impatience for adulthood. The man with him, slick hair, cheaper suit, gestured at the cameras like a realtor praising light. Marcus's stomach tightened. Nora stepped to the door, positioned herself beside Marcus, and opened it halfway. "Dad," Evan said, and then to Nora, "We'll need privacy." "This is a workplace," Nora replied evenly. "If you have legal documents, you can show them at the threshold." Evan blinked, recalculating the map of his own house. "This is family business." "Family can be business if you make it so," she said. "Please present your papers." He handed over the notice. An ex parte request to restrict Marcus's spending pending Friday. Nora read it, then turned to Marcus. "Do you want them inside?" He considered the weight of old habits and shook his head. "No." "Then we'll speak here," she said, and stepped back so that Marcus stood in the frame, not hidden, not cornered. Evan delivered a little speech about care and deterioration that sounded borrowed from an article he had not finished. Marcus listened and, when he answered, kept his voice low. "You're worried in ways that help you," he said. "I'm worried in ways that help me. I'm working with counsel. We'll see the judge Friday." It was not a quarrel. It was a weather report. The suited man leaned close to Evan. "Note the lack of professional support staff," he whispered, too loudly. Nora smiled without smiling. "I'm the staff," she said, "and the witness, and the person who will tell the court that you were invited to speak respectfully and chose to whisper at my shoulder instead." Evan flinched. The man looked at his shoes. They left with the SUV's dignity dented. As their tail lights vanished, Nora's phone chimed. "Aunt Dell. Compressor installed. Landlord unmoved. Fundraiser Friday night at the community center. We'll pass a hat and pass it again." Nora typed, "I'll be there in spirit till after the hearing, then I'll be there in feet." She glanced at Marcus. "If Harbalite match donations anonymously up to a cap," she said, "people would feel seen, not owned." "Done," he said, then corrected himself. "Proposed. With a condition. A neighborhood board decides the spend. I sign checks, not agendas. That's how you keep it from becoming your story instead of theirs," she said. They agreed on a cap and a single-page pledge without logos. Marcus drafted the language that had once come easily. Aim precisely, disappear. Nora added one sentence. Board must include 2 elders and 1 teenager, which made him grin. "Teenagers see what we edit out," she said. "Also, they don't let adults lie about soda prices." The afternoon tilted. In Marcus's inbox, Dr. Keegan materialized like mold. "We have noticed unusual inquiries regarding your account. Sharing confidential arrangements is a breach of our care protocol. We look forward to resolving this amicably." Nora annotated the email with her red clip. "Predator language," she said. "Unusual, confidential, amicably. All ways to make you feel ashamed for asking questions. Attorney Reyes will enjoy this." At dusk, the same Pacific compliance van idled again, this time without knocking. Nora walked out with her phone in record mode. "Work order," she called. The engine coughed. The van rolled back down the drive and into the dark. She sent the plate to the sheriff and wrote it in the binder under Predators with a tidier hand than the moment deserved. They ate soup at the island, 2 bowls, 2 spoons, the deliberate ceremony of normal. "I keep wanting to fix everything with 1 transfer," Marcus said, staring at the steam. "It's what I was trained to do." Solve the whole problem in one call, one number. Magic numbers keep the problem alive, Nora said. They teach everyone to wait for lightning. We need weather, not lightning. He thought of Maya's laugh and the Harbolite letters. Would you, after Friday, assuming I can still sign my name without asking my son, help me rebuild the fund? Not as a benefactor's toy, as a quiet machine. Nora set down her spoon. I'll help with conditions, she said. We build it with locks that keep ego out. We let the board say no to us. And we write our names only where the law makes us. She hesitated. And I keep my job here until you tell me we've worked me out of it. You just negotiated your own redundancy, he said. Dignity is maintenance, she answered. Repair requires paychecks. He laughed, surprised by the ease. Then he grew sober. One more ask. Will you speak Friday? Not as savior, as witness to the ordinary. The coffee, the blue flags, the way you wouldn't cross a threshold that wasn't yours. I will, she said. On one condition. He raised his hands, mock defeated. Another. Make a tab for dignity, she said, sliding the binder to him and handing over a pen. Every decision, house, hearing, Harbolite, has to pass it. He wrote the word slow, as if conviction were a muscle that liked being warmed. After she left, the wind combed the headland. Marcus stood at the studio door and did not open it. He walked instead to the music room, where dust still kept its quiet truce with the keys, and pressed his palm against the glass. In the reflection he saw a man not improved by money but steadied by paper and salt and another person's steady eyes. The ocean worked at the basalt below as if practicing for Friday. He could not know what a judge would think of his rituals. He knew only this: he would not walk into that room alone. Friday dawned like a legal pad, ruled, pale, expectant. Marcus wore the gray suit from Maya's memorial. Nora arrived with the binder and a thermos, wrote breathe on a card, and tucked it into his inside pocket. If you lose your words, she said, borrow this one. Attorney Adriana Reyes met them on the courthouse steps. We won't claim you never falter, she said. We'll show your habits hold. The petition alleged cognitive slide, unsafe home, predatory outsiders. Their answers would be routine logs, a safety audit, witnesses, and, if needed, the predator's own emails. The judge was calm and paper first. Evan tapped his phone until the clerk frowned. Marcus fixed on the word breathe as if it were taped above the bench. Evan's counsel opened with staging furniture adjectives. Precipitous decline, erratic decisions, inability to manage assets. Adriana let the air drain, then stood. Grief can loosen a man's grip, she said. Here is proof the grip remains. She submitted the week's routine, the medication log, the service list Nora had dated and signed. Mrs. Kincaid testified that Marcus signed for packages and paid exact postage. The neighbor with the dawn dog spoke of the same walk at the same hour. Then Nora took the stand. I keep a binder, doors, codes, routines, legal contacts, and a tab for predators, she said. Not people, behaviors designed to extract. We mark panic switches with blue flags. Breathe, then act. We label blind spots so quiet things can't happen there. She described red clipping suspicious bills and pausing autopay to North Shore Wellness pending records. Did you ever find sensitive materials unsecured? Yes, Nora said, and told the room about the Ajar studio, the fob, the yellow note with suspect digits. She called the agency, sealed the fob, locked the screen, and sat where the camera saw the whole of her. I am a black woman in a house with cameras, she said. Honesty also means being seen. Evan's attorney tried to twist it. So there were unsecured items. Isn't that unsafe? It would be if left that way by accident, she said. Mr. Hale later told me it was a test. Either way, we secured them. Safety isn't never having risk. It's teaching risk where to sit. Adriana introduced the email from North Shore Wellness. Unusual inquiries, confidential arrangements, resolve amicably. The judge leaned forward. File your complaint, she said, and copy the DA's Consumer Fraud Unit. Relevance objection, overruled. If you allege predators, We will discuss predators when we see them. At last Marcus stood. He did not reach for eloquence. He told the court about oatmeal and checklists, and his errors, bills ignored in mourning, a gardener fired for questions. I'm not asking you to sanctify my loneliness, he said. I'm asking you to notice that my life is documented, my house safer this week than last, and that I have help I can hear. Evan rose with a son's urgency and spoke of a father who used to be fluent in fixing. He wanted his father inland, away from storms and cliffs. Adriana didn't contest love. She asked about timing. Had Evan sought access to the fund before any evaluation? Had documents been drafted in advance? He stumbled. The judge wrote notes like weather reports. The ruling came without theatrics. Petition for temporary conservatorship denied. 90-day review with independent evaluation ordered. Monthly safety audits required. Mr. Hale, said the judge, your rituals serve you. Build them with help. Ms. Bennett, continue to document. Mr. Hale's son, worry is not entitlement. Add your steadiness to theirs. Outside, Marcus exhaled until he had to grip the rail. Nora offered the thermos. Breathe, she said, and this time it felt shared, not solitary. Adriana checked her watch. Go, she said. You have a fundraiser to almost attend. At the community center, jars sat on tables beneath a sign promising anonymous matching. The teen committee collected receipts. Marcus stayed near the door while Nora moved among her people. He watched a boy in a cracked jacket drop 3 singles into a jar and grin at the sound. A supplier delivered milk at cost and shook hands with the elders who'd called him. The teen treasurer announced the tally, enough to cover the compressor and the rent balance if matched. The room cheered. Matched? Aunt Dell called, and the cheer doubled. Nora met Marcus's eyes across the room and tilted her head. Not triumph, partnership. Back on the headland, Nora taped a new blue flag beside the hall baseboard where the blind spot had been. Look out, it read. The house seemed to understand the second meaning. Keep looking out for each other. Marcus stood in the music room doorway and did not touch the keys. He said the verdict to the dust, denied, review, audit, and found the words less frightening in that room. His phone buzzed. A note from Adriana. Fraud unit acknowledged receipt. From the supplier, compressor installed. From the teen treasurer, thank you, from a kid who dropped $3 and felt 10 feet tall. He turned off the last light and let the ocean speak. The cliff was still a cliff. The wind still kept its counsel. But the house had a language now. Doors, codes, routines, predators, dignity, and one more tab unwritten but present. Family, the chosen kind, built by paper and soup and the refusal to sell what cannot be bought. The week after court unspooled like good thread. Marcus and Nora moved through the house with the binder between them, pages multiplying as if prudence were a plant that liked rain. Adriana sent dates for the independent evaluation. Tuesday at 10, Dr. Lillian Shore, and Nora wrote the name in block letters under legal, then added a note. Offer tea, offer fax. The community market hung new produce signs with the teen treasurer's handwriting. The compressor hummed like a second chance. Harbolite's pledge, signed without logos, sat in Aunt Dell's till. Matching up to a ceiling, decisions made by a neighborhood board that included, per Nora's insistence, 2 elders and 1 teenager. The long tail of an old generosity had found a new ankle to hold. Predators did not sleep. North Shore Wellness sent a letter that pretended to be polite and threatened exactly enough to sour a stomach. Adriana's reply was not polite and did not threaten. It listed statutes like stepping stones and copied the DA's fraud unit. The van from Pacific Compliance returned and idled at the end of the drive without knocking. Nora filmed the plate again and wrote in Predators. Persistence is not legitimacy. On Thursday, a wind marched in from the mouth of the Columbia and planted its boots in the headland. The lights browned and revived, then browned again. Generator? Nora asked. Marcus checked the panel. The old unit coughed and hesitated. She had prepared for this like a school nurse. Crank radios, headlamps, battery lanterns, a box of snap lights labeled in cheerful marker. The house knows electricity, she said, But it should also no candles. She taped a blue flag by the fuse panel. Breathe. Then breakers. Near midnight, the cameras in the East Hall went blind for a blink. The overlap Nora had marked with a paper dot weeks ago. Then the door chime pinged once, softly. The sound a house makes when it isn't sure. Marcus's chest went tight. Nora put 2 fingers on the counter, a conductor's cue for calm. She had hung 3 tiny bells on fishing line inside the east door where a draft could not stir them. One bell murmured and went still. They didn't speak. She handed him a headlamp and pointed to the phone already dialed to the sheriff, thumb hovering over call. Marcus, who had built an empire by stepping first, let her draw the map. She ghosted to the hallway, stayed in the camera's eye, and called through the door in a voice that made mistakes think twice. "You're recorded on 3 angles," she said. "State your work order or step back to the floodlight." Silence. Then shoes on gravel, too quick. Then the sound of someone misjudging the path to the drive in the dark. Nora pressed call. The deputy found no van by the road, only prints in the muddy shoulder and a zip tie cut clean through, as if someone had practiced binding and blundered into a house that had rehearsed saying no. After the deputy left, they sat at the island, headlamps haloing steam from mugs. "You did well," Marcus said. "You made the house small enough to protect." Nora shook her head. "You did well," she said. "You didn't decide it was your job to be the wall." Wind combed the shingles until morning. At first light, Evan appeared in the driveway in yesterday's shirt, shoulders lowered a notch from court day pride. He stood beneath the eave like someone who had remembered to knock at last. Nora opened the door to shoulder width. "Morning," she said. He nodded, swallowed, and looked at his father the way grown sons do when they are learning how not to perform adulthood at their fathers. "I'm sorry," he said. Not for the petition. Not yet. For the way he had tried to bulldoze the weak into his shape. "I thought I was protecting the family," he added, the sentence every hurt person rehearses. "You were protecting a fear," Marcus said, and did not make the correction cruel. "Sit. Coffee. No lawyers." Over cups, Evan confessed the part he should have told before. He had reached out to Keegan months back, asking for an evaluation that could help the conservatorship along. Keegan had been eager and vague, confidential arrangements, expedited assessments, and Evan had told himself that vagueness was professionalism. The van, he admitted, had been hired by the firm his friend knew. "Compliance checks," he said, wincing at the word as if it had been living in his mouth like a bad tooth. Nora listened without rescuing him. "Predator behaviors," she said, tapping the binder. "Invoices with no itemization. Stories that hurry you. Outsiders claiming inside authority." Evan looked at the tab as if it were a mirror. "I wanted a fast way to clean the mess," he said. "Lightning, not weather." Marcus slid him the dignity tab. "Help us with the weather," he said. "Monthly audits. Sit in. Learn the checklist. Then go stock apples at the market with the teenager who counts change like prayer. Earn your way into this family the way we are trying to." Evan nodded, ashamed and newly tasked. "I'll show up," he said. "I can carry crates." When he left, the house felt less like a contested asset and more like a lighthouse being repaired by 3 people with different ladders. Marcus pulled a leather portfolio from the studio, not the old trap but the thin bones of a new charter. He had drafted Harbolite's second life on paper that still smelled faintly of the first. Purpose paragraphs, conflict of interest locks, a policy for anonymous matching that guaranteed the board's vote outran his impulse. He had written one proposal in the margin. Director to be chosen by board. Founder abstains. He set the portfolio on the island. "If this becomes real," he said, "I want you in the room when the board chooses." Nora traced the spine with a knuckle, considering the floor more than the ceiling. "I don't take titles to fill loneliness," she said. "If they ask, I'll answer. But only if the rules we wrote today survive us." "They will," he said. He didn't say, "I want you to lead it." He had learned the slow grammar of trust. Invitation, not trap. In the afternoon, Dr. Lillian Shore called to confirm Tuesday. Her voice made order sound like kindness. "I don't need you to be perfect," she told Marcus. I need you to be observed. Nora wrote observed in the binder and underlined it twice. We'll show her the blue flags, she said. And the bells. Toward evening the wind dropped, as if tired of its own argument. Nora taped a fresh blue flag above the east door where the bells had whispered. Look out, she wrote, then added a second line we hadn't seen in this house before. For each other. The words glowed in the lowering light like a promise that wanted witnesses. Marcus stood in the music room doorway and gave the dust a weather report. Storm, attempted entry, apology, coffee. He did not press a key. Not yet. He placed his palm on the piano's lid and felt the wood return his heat. A quiet proof that touch could move in two directions. Night came without knocking. The generator hummed, cured for now by a mechanic who accepted soup and a check and refused the story that he was part of anyone's rescue. In the office, Marcus signed a single-page pledge for the market board, then laid the pen down as if laying down a tool, not a weapon. He had spent years building floors that would not give way. Now he found himself interested in building rooms people wanted to enter. On the counter, the portfolio waited. Not a test. An invitation. Tuesday smelled like clean rain and paper. Marcus wore the gray suit. Nora made him finish the oatmeal and tucked a blue flag in his pocket. Listen. If your mind wanders, she said, wander to this. Dr. Lillian Shore came with a canvas briefcase and a pace that said nothing would be hurried. Walk me through a morning, she asked. Marcus did window, coffee, oatmeal, doors. She wanted systems, not speeches. Nora laid the binder open. Doors, routines, dignity. Dr. Shore traced the blue flags and the tiny bell wires by the east door as if reading staff lines. In the pantry she asked him to narrate a recipe. In the hall she asked for the panic switch. At the closed music room she paused. What does this mean? Snow, he said, and she accepted the answer without pushing the storm. Back at the island she tested memory and judgment. 3 nouns, 7s backwards, a proverb explained without charm. She asked him to outline the next 90 days and to show where help fit. He did, pointing to Nora, to the neighbor with the dawn dog, to the mail carrier who would testify he paid exact postage. Ritual can be health, Dr. Shore said. The trick is to know when it cages and when it steadies. By noon she gave a preliminary impression. Executive function intact with adaptive supports. Grief within range. Psychotherapy, not conservatorship. Keep monthly audits because they anchor, not because he is adrift. There is strength in chosen routine, she wrote. There is safety in letting others see it. The formal report would file by Friday. Marcus felt his shoulders lower the way a house settles after wind. Predators dislike day. Adriana texted. Fraud unit opened a case. Subpoenas to North Shore Wellness. Within an hour, a restricted caller invoked special arrangements and confidential care. On speaker, Nora asked for a bar number and an address for counsel. The pause grew long and the call died. She clipped the number under predators and wrote, shame language. At dusk, the bank flagged a login from an unfamiliar device. 2-factor stalled it. A transfer path froze. Nora read from the script they had rehearsed after the van. Confirm devices, rotate codes, attach a human approver to large wires. The banker gave a direct extension and promised to call if midnight breathed wrong. Lightning, not weather, she murmured. Weather, he agreed. That night, the community center held its first board meeting under the pledge. Folding chairs, coffee, a poster that asked how do we keep each other. Elder Ruth took minutes. Malik, the teen treasurer, proposed refrigeration curtains and homework hours at the market. Marcus sat in back and spoke once. Buy tools, not trophies. At break, Evan lugged crates with new humility and apologized to Aunt Dell without a speech. When the tally came, the board voted 3 microgrants and set rules for matching. Published criteria, open ledgers, no names on plaques. Back on the headland, Nora and Marcus opened the Harbolite portfolio. You wrote locks against your worst instincts, she said, reading the conflict policy that would have made his younger self bristle. He slid an unsigned donor letter across the island. Seed money contingent on board independence. If they ask you to lead, he said carefully, I'll cheer. If they don't, I'll still cheer. She studied the ceiling, then the floor. If they ask, I will answer, she said. But I won't wear a title that eats my life. I want to be useful and still be able to ride the bus. They walked to the music room. He opened the door and stood as if at a border. Dust lay thin as breath on the keys. Sit, Nora said. Not to perform. To remember sound. He pressed middle C and let it ring until the air took its shape. No tears, no grandness, just tone, and the simple human fact that tone needs a body to hold it. Dr. Shore texted an addendum. Include note about attempted entry and the van. Safety addressed by audits, bells, and blue flags. Adriana followed. Keegan's clinic has counsel. Expect spin. Nora said, we answer spin with paper. And with soup. Evan sent a blurry photo of his nicked hands and a crate of apples. Caption. For the record. Marcus saved it like a small affidavit. Night settled without incident. The bells were still. The blue flags glowed like soft instructions. Nora slid the binder to its shelf, not as relic but as tool. Tomorrow we take the portfolio to the board, she said. We let them ask the hard questions. We let them tell us no. We let them tell us yes, he said. And we remember our fingerprints aren't signatures unless someone asks. That's the line, she said. Put it in the charter. He did. Before she left, they stood by the east door where the blind spot used to be. The paper dot was gone, replaced by a small brass chime a neighbor had made. Quiet things can still happen, Nora said. But now they have to sing. He looked around the kitchen. The binder's spine, the blue flags, the thermos she never forgot. For years his vigilance had been a wall he stood behind alone. Now it felt like a lamp he could hand to someone else without going dark himself. He switched off the last light. The house breathed on the headland, and the ocean kept repeating the oldest instruction. Keep your promises. Look out. For each other. The formal report arrived on a Thursday, the envelope crisp as a new habit. Dr. Lillian Shore's letter was measured and generous. Executive function, sound within adaptive structures. Judgment appropriate when supported by documented routines. No conservatorship recommended. Psychotherapy and monthly audits to continue. Marcus placed the paper beneath the blue flag on the refrigerator, a small shrine to ordinary sanity. He wrote the review date on the calendar and circled it twice, not as a threat, as an appointment with steadiness. Adriana forwarded a second packet. The fraud units noticed that North Shore Wellness was under investigation. Records secured. A temporary freeze on billing. Restitution likely. Marcus read the bureaucratic prose with the satisfaction of a man who had learned to prefer process over thunder. When it comes, he said, we will fold the check into Harbolite. Nora nodded. Bad medicine pays for good groceries. Clean math. Evan kept showing up at the community market with crate-bitten hands and no speeches. He learned the rhythms, morning oranges, afternoon onions, the 4 p.m. rush of kids trading coins for milk and bread. When a customer recognized his last name and raised an eyebrow, he said, my father loves this town from far away. I'm learning to love it up close. Aunt Dell nodded once, a benediction you had to earn. In the house, storms became errands. The bells at the east door stayed quiet. Nora replaced the paper under the camera with a brass chime a neighbor had made, its thin voice practicing the art of notice. She moved the binder from the center of the island to a shelf by the pantry, reachable without dominating the room. Tools belong where chores begin, she said. Marcus, who had once worshipped control like a jealous god, found he preferred worship that emptied the dishwasher. They took the Harbolite portfolio to the community center for a vote. Folding chairs, a dry erase board, coffee that tasted like perseverance. Elder Ruth called the meeting to order with a pencil, which felt exactly right. Adriana sat in the back and kept her lawyer's pen capped. Malik, the teen treasurer, opened with numbers and a shy grin, as if math were a dance he was learning in public. Marcus presented the charter and then, as promised, stepped aside. This is not a trophy, he said. It's a tool. If it stops fixing and starts performing, take it from our hands. Questions came like rain. Conflict of interest locks, donor privacy. Who decides what need means when the line is long? Nora answered with the plainness of someone who had cleaned floors and balanced ledgers. 2 elders and 1 teenager must sign every grant, she said. Open books, quarterly. The director, if there is one, does not touch decisions about their own street. We buy refrigerators, not plaques. A boy in a track jacket raised his hand. Can the market stay open late during finals so we have a warm place to study? Nora wrote it under programs and glanced at the elders. They nodded. The room felt, for a second, like a hand that had learned how to hold its own. When the board asked whom they should hire to steward the fund, Aunt Dell cleared her throat. We already have someone who knows how to make good rooms, she said, looking at Nora. Then at the binder she carried like a modest instrument. A murmur, then a motion, then a vote. Nora stood very still. I don't take titles to plug loneliness, she said, repeating herself because the truth didn't mind repetition. If I accept like a janitor accepts a ring of keys, because the floors must shine and the doors must open. I keep my hours bus-shaped. I answer to the board. If you need to remove me, the charter makes it easy. Malik read the clause aloud. Director removable by board supermajority without cause. The room exhaled. Trust is easier when escape hatches are printed in ink. Nora accepted. Marcus, abstaining like a man who had finally learned what founders should not do, signed the seed pledge with a steady hand. After the meeting they walked to the headland with paper cups of coffee and the portfolio tucked under Nora's arm. Marcus opened the studio with a key that no longer felt like a wand. The yellow trap note was gone. In its place Nora taped a blue flag that read, in her ordinary hand, "NO tests." We will still be careful, she said. We just won't confuse caution with suspicion. He placed the leather portfolio beside the drafting table and, after a breath, pushed the door wide enough that a future could walk through without bumping its shins. Evenings turned domestic. Evan came for soup on Wednesdays. He insisted on chopping onions and wore the tears like penance until Nora reminded him that onions don't care about our narratives. Adriana visited once, declined to talk law, and played gin rummy badly on purpose. Dr. Shore left a voicemail the week before the review, not clinical so much as human. Keep the rituals that breathe, lose the ones that choke. Marcus saved it and listened to it when the cliff wind sang too loud. The letter from the DA arrived with a photocopy of an agreement in which North Shore Wellness acknowledged billing irregularities and agreed to restitution. The check felt tasteless in Marcus's fingers. He endorsed it to the community board in front of the teen treasurer and elder Ruth, then handed the pen to Nora. She didn't sign. She stamped received on the ledger and grinned. Paper is just air you can file, she said. But sometimes the air smells like lemons. One night, with the fog curled low around the headland, Nora said, "Open the snow." He understood. They stood in the threshold of the music room and let the dust stay while he lifted the lid. He played the first bars of a song Maya used to hum in the kitchen when deliveries ran late and life ran long. The room did not become a shrine again. It became a room where sound could live. When he finished, Nora did not clap. She poured tea and set a single blue flag on the piano fallboard. Keep going. On the morning of the review, they laid the binder on the island and made 2 additions. Under people, Nora wrote Evan, "Carry crates, not cases." Under dignity, she added a question. Does this make the room wider? The deputy who had answered the van call stopped by for coffee and a quick look at the chime. He left with soup in a thermos and the sense that not all houses are lonely. The headland wind softened, spent from months of making statements. When the mail came, Mrs. Kincaid handed over a small padded envelope addressed in careful block letters. Inside lay 3 tiny brass bells and a note. For other thresholds. From the kid with $3. Marcus set one by the studio, one by the market's freezer curtain, and one by the community center door. When they rang, it was never loud. It was enough. That night, after Nora caught the bus and the house exhaled into its beams, Marcus walked the rooms one more time without counting them. He paused at each blue flag and translated it into a promise. Breathe, choose patience. Look out for each other. Listen, Because truth doesn't shout. No tests. Trust is not a game. Keep going. Because the opposite of grief isn't forgetting. It's building. On the cliff path, he met Evan coming up from town with empty hands and an easy stride. Soup? Evan asked. Always, Marcus said, and they went inside together. The ocean went on being the ocean, old and opinionated. The house went on being a house, stormproof not because storms had stopped but because three people had agreed to be lamps for one another instead of locks.